Hello, this is Storybooks channel. New videos are posted every day. Subscribe and click the bell.
Open your face, Molly joked with some irritation. Her husband, as usual, had shut himself off from the world with a fresh newspaper at breakfast. Yeah. Christian mumbled from his hiding place, rustled the page. Now I'll see how the crime is doing, and the man was silent in amazement, then turned the newspaper towards his wife. Come and see what kind of face is here. When did you become so famous? Molly took the newspaper, looked at the portrait of the woman, and raised her eyebrows. The image was indeed very much like her. She read at the bottom, suspected of murder, committed to a mental institution. Yes, they say everyone in the world has at least one doppelganger, but why is mine not a beauty queen, but a crazed murderer? She said indignantly. No, but what is the resemblance? Maybe you have a sister? The husband continued to wonder. You know very well I have no sisters. Molly cut him off. It's just a resemblance, the angle. And in general in these newspapers, the pictures are such that you do not recognize yourself. Eat up. It's getting cold. Camille didn't want to be admitted to the rural hospital, even though she came just before the birth. Who are you? Where did you come from? Do you have an exchange card? They asked her sternly. Nothing, it hurts a lot. I'll give birth now. Camille held on to her big belly, squirming in pain. How far along are you? Have you had any tests? The midwife looked at her and saw that the hem of her dress was wet. When did the water break? Not long ago. I didn't take anything while I was coming. I don't remember the due date. It's early, I suppose, but I can't. Ouch! The girl moaned. What an idiot country girl. All right, let's put her on the table. Or she'll really give birth under the door. There's a multiple birth, it seems. Have you even seen a doctor? But Camille couldn't answer. She was so sick. Not an hour later, her daughters were born, 2 twin girls, but the woman did not recognize it. Immediately after the birth, she fell into unconsciousness and soon died. Yeah, that's a hell of a blow. Any paperwork? It is necessary to inform somewhere, relatives, or whoever. The head doctor sighed unhappily. So maybe we should bury her as a stray, and that's fine. Suggested an elderly lady paramedic. Or they will come with their claims and blame us for everything. And what about the children? Say that you gave birth to them. The doctor was indignant. Or you also ordered to give them away somewhere. I wonder at you, are you a doctor or what? Like or not, but her relatives will come and tell us who we are. They'll drag us to court. Well, I've got a passport and a phone number for a Michael. Let's notify both. Let whoever wants to bury them. Take their kids, Michael or whoever. Camille didn't really want to go from her native village to the city. That is, she didn't know. She wanted to see the light, but she was afraid. And where would she go? There were classmates who had already left, who were studying. Someone had relatives. They promised to arrange a place for her. But she, Camille, did not succeed in her studies. She was glad to get out of school at least, but she did not want to think about studying somewhere else. She had no relatives either. Besides, her mother Clara did not really want to let her only daughter, young and pretty, go anywhere. There were such stories in their village that girls left and then came back as women, unmarried, but with children. And she was not very optimistic about the intelligence and cleverness of her Camille. She was not stupid, of course, but she was too trusting, too simple-minded, so she was the only one to disappear in the city. But then her neighbor Olivia persuaded her. Olivia had such a tongue that she could talk to anyone, and here she came and started a song. I've found a place for your Camille in town, a place that's a godsend. But wait a minute, don't wave your arms around, just listen, and then think about what you're doing to spoil a girl's life. She'll go to the farm, that's a great blessing. There's enough people there now, they want to make her a shepherdess. She'll be a shepherdess, what's the big deal? I guess that's our fate, and what's the joy in this town? She'll be lost there. It will be lost here, I tell you. And you listen, what a place. I'd be the first to talk you out of going to a factory. It's not for girls, of course, to hang around in dormitories where everyone's in a heap, men and girls alike. But what I'm offering you is a housekeeper in a good family. What else? A housekeeper. Clara hesitated. And what do we all live as? Not servants? And in the city, what's not to live? And the water from the tap is hot at once, and gas in the kitchen, and the family is rich. I tell you, husband and wife, no children, it's already good. To live in a nice apartment is the same as them. The owner himself is in some kind of trade position, so they eat things we haven't seen in the movies. How do you know that? Camille's mother was surprised. From my sisters Barbara, her daughter Lisa, I lived with them for 3 years and never knew any grief. She became a city girl and found a good husband. She's a city girl now, so they're looking for a new one. Barbara told me to find a girl who's quiet and neat. Well, who else but your Camille? That's true, but I'm still afraid. Well, be afraid, be afraid. A place like this will be snatched away, and you're breaking down. Ask the girl what she wants. To spend her life twisting cows' tails, or to live like a human being for a while. Where is she? She's in the vegetable garden, tending tomatoes. That's a nice thing to do. In the garden, in manure, that's how she spends her life. In a year or two, she'll turn into a hunchbacked aunt with black hands, and all because of your fear. Shout to her. We'll ask her ourselves. Her mother called Camille from the vegetable garden, and she realized at once that the matter was serious. She quickly rinsed her hands, took off her muddy boots, and came in. Good afternoon, Aunt Olivia. Listen, daughter, what does Olivia offer us here? Olivia had already told Camille everything, and so colorfully, with such details that the girl's eyes lit up, though she did not dare to agree at once, looking at her mother, what she would say. And she looked at her beauty, at her hands, really with black broken nails, at her feet, soiled with nettles. Olivia was right. Why should she ruin her girlhood, her golden years in the village? Let her live in the city at least for a while, and Clara made up her mind. You have my word, my daughter. Go. It won't work. You'll miss it there. It's never too late to come back. Go. Don't be afraid of anything. I'm not old yet. I can manage without you. What about you, Camille? What about you? Do you agree? Olivia asked. Oh, I don't even know how. The girl was confused. And how? You get on the train and go. There we'll meet you. We'll take you to the place. So do not even worry. That's how quickly. The place will not wait. They gathered Camille, bought a ticket, put her on the train, and she went to her new life. She was scared on the way. She had not eaten anything for 2 days. She couldn't eat anything, and it turned out to be nothing scary at all. Lisa, Aunt Olivia's niece, met her at the station, drove her home, and on the way, just like her mother, described all the charms of life in a new family. The owners Isabella and Michael welcomed Camille, showed her everything, told her everything, and Lisa promised to come by and introduce Camille to the wisdom of living in the city and taking care of the apartment. The apartment itself was large, 3-roomed, and the girl, who had never been anywhere but her village, was amazed. At first she was afraid to touch anything. Everything seemed so luxurious and fragile, but Lisa reassured her. Don't worry, Camille. I was scared at first, too, but then nothing. I ran around the apartment as if it were my own. I broke a couple of plates. Nobody noticed, and even if they did, it would be all right. People are not evil, not harmful. The main thing is to be brave. All troubles happen because of fear. You better see what room you'll live in. You probably never dreamed of such a place at home. The room really seemed luxurious to Camille, though small, with a narrow window, but it was her own, and she had everything she needed: a bed, a table, and a closet with a large mirror. And on the wall was a picture, not a simple one cut out of a magazine, but a real one, framed under glass. A beautiful woman against the background of a bush with roses, as in a museum. And in the rooms Camille had already seen, not rugs on the walls, but pictures in frames, as apparently cultured people should have. Oh, Lisa, if only to be able to do everything, if only to please the owners, she could only exhale. The owners really treated her well, both Michael and Isabella. They both worked, but Camille didn't quite understand that is, about the owner of the house. She didn't understand. He didn't say where he worked. Isabella had said she taught at a university. For a modest housekeeper, this statement was tantamount to saying that the mistress could fly. Camille and students then considered some kind of celestials doing something supernatural. And here you have a person who teaches these unusual people, and she, Camille, calmly solves with her all sorts of domestic issues. Who would have thought it? Isabella doesn't get on Camille's nerves. If you don't understand something, she doesn't order you, doesn't shout, explains it so clearly, so intelligently that you don't want to, but you will understand everything. Soon Camille stopped being afraid of everything, realized that a gas stove is much safer than an oven. The refrigerator is much more convenient, and the owners are even more affectionate than her own mother, who can yell and shout and towel chase if you do something wrong. And then suddenly it began, as Camille called her first and only love. Yes, it was Michael, a solid, handsome man. At first Camille was so timid in front of him that she couldn't even raise her eyes. All she could see was either his plaid slippers or his shined shoes. She learned that it was she who was to put a gloss on these elegant shoes on the first day. In front of his wife, Michael paid little attention to the housekeeper, dropping polite words. "Good morning. Thank you, please. See you tonight," and that was it. With this politeness he surprised the girl. Why should she thank him for the food or laundry, or for the same shoes, if he pays money for it? But apparently that's the way it is with such people, the culture. They, husband and wife, were also polite to each other, no swearing ever, not a rude word. When Michael called her Camille, the name seemed to sound different, and her heart seemed to melt, but he called her that only when Isabella was not around, which made their communication quite intimate. "Why, Camille, you are afraid of me, for we are closer than kin to each other." So he said, and his voice was as if sad. She really felt Michael closer than a relative, though she was afraid to admit even to herself that she had already fallen in love with him. "He loves me too," Camille guessed. To admit, only afraid, because he is married, but it does not matter so much. They have no children, and therefore, and husband and wife, they are not so real. So she calmed herself, gave herself hope, but she realized that they were real, and she was just a servant. A year later, she did not hide her feelings, and sometimes cried at night. "I was lucky to fall in love with you, my dear Michael." She was ashamed to call him that, even to herself, and feared that she might say it during the day. So she allowed herself to say it, Michael, rarely, once a week. She persuaded herself to be patient. In 3 more days, so be it. Ah! She was exhausted from this love. She even lost weight. Her face fell off, as her mother would say. And he, apparently, guessed, and one day it happened between them. Quite by chance, one beautiful sunny morning, when the landlady had gone to teach her students, and Michael was late for some reason, and Camille was in no hurry to leave the kitchen, not on purpose. It was just that there were some things to do, ordinary, everyday things. It was just that it was getting harder and harder to do them. Her hands, as if ossified, her fingers were numb and cold, and her heart was beating so hard that it seemed to be heard on the street, and in her head it was beating. Now it will happen. Michael must have felt it too, because he didn't even look like he was doing anything, but just sat there looking at Camille. Finally he whispered, "Camille, you love me." And she turned around, looking at him with all her eyes, and answered in a broken voice, "Yes, and I have loved you for a long time. And tell me, why do we have to torture each other like this?" Approaching the girl, Michael spoke. Seeing that Camille was ready to fall senseless, he picked her up and carried her in his arms to the bedroom, not to her cell, but to the marital bedroom on a wide bed as a newlywed. 15 minutes later, Camille, tucked into her lover's shoulder, wept sweetly with great relief. At last her love had found a way out. She is with her beloved, and it will always be so. They are already husband and wife, and that other know to think of Isabella, so kind, beautiful, intelligent, but hopelessly unloved, did not want to absolutely. "What are you crying about, Camille?" Michael asked. "Do you regret what happened?" "No, Michael, I'm happy. You really love me, don't you?" "I love you very much, my dear." The man's voice was suddenly affirming. He shook off the lover's languor. "But let's make a deal. Even when we're alone, no Michael, and no you, it's for our own safety. You get used to it. You slip up in front of Isabella, and everything goes to shit. Agreed?" Of course. Camille wasn't the least bit ticked off by that order. "I'll never make a mistake, Michael. No one will suspect a thing. Just don't leave me." "My good girl, how can I leave you?" He looked back at the sheet. "And now, alas, I must go. You two don't lie around. Carefully clean up everything, the traces. Meet Isabella tonight as if nothing had happened." He got up and began to dress carefully. Camille also tried to tidy up. She had little interest in the future, even in terms of further development of the relationship. At that moment she was happy, she loved and was loved. What else was needed? And the fact that her beloved is married, well, what does it matter? He alienates his wife in conversation, calls her by name and patronymic. Does that say something? Doesn't it? Well, there she is, Isabella. What can you do? What if I live here someday as a landlady? The girl thought with a sinking heart. But I'll never take a young housekeeper. No way. Such thoughts made her feel funny and anxious. Would Michael ever dare to change their lives? Though such thoughts came later, at first she was just happier than she had ever been in her life. She was most afraid that it would become noticeable to others, on the street, to strangers. That's half a miracle. But at home, Isabella herself would notice. And no matter how hard Camille tried to hold back, to make herself look serious, the landlady noticed and once jokingly asked her at dinner, "Why are you glowing, Camille? Are you in love?" "Me? No, why?" The girl was confused, embarrassed. "Well, don't blush, it's the right time for it. But don't hurry with marriage, we don't want to stay without you." The landlady calmed her down. The girl ran out of the kitchen, but heard Isabella say to her husband, "Shouldn't we shine, Michael?" This caused Camille a wave of such jealousy, for every night her lover embraces his lawful wife, and she. For the first time, She thought about the fact that at some point some certainty would have to be brought to their relationship. But how could one say so? Only once did she shyly ask, "Will it always be like this, Michael?" She meant their secret love, but he understood otherwise or pretended otherwise. "What are you going to do? Quit your job?" "Don't even think about it. I won't let you go." Her lover jokingly interrupted her. Camille laughed happily again, quite satisfied with this answer. She did not want to think that it could not go on like this forever, but she could not imagine that it would end. But one day it ended the way it was supposed to. Isabella caught her lover in a most unambiguous position. Either they themselves had lost caution or she suspected something and decided to arrange an audit. The door suddenly opened. The dumbfounded wife and mistress stared silently at her husband and housekeeper, frantically trying to cover themselves. Isabella, without uttering a word, walked out of the room, closing the door behind her. "Oh shit, what a mess." Without looking at Camille, Michael muttered. He quickly zipped up and left the room without looking at his mistress. Camille was already dressed, but did not dare to go out. She was afraid to meet her mistress. Who knows what these deceived wives are capable of? What if she had boiling water ready? She had heard of such atrocities. There were no sounds of scandal or fighting in the corridor, only quiet voices, words Camille could not make out. It was very noisy in the ears. Maybe she was talking about a divorce? She hoped so. Isabella appeared in the doorway again. "Well, are you standing there?" she asked contemptuously. "Pack up and leave immediately." "Yes, how can I? Where to?" Camille mumbled confusedly. She waited for Michael to appear, to intercede, to tell his wife that he loved Camille, that he would not let her go anywhere, but he did not appear. Had she not killed him? The girl was terrified. "Quickly, you could talk about it in your own village," the landlady continued. Camille stepped timidly out of the bedroom, looked around. There was no blood anywhere, but no Michael either. "Maybe he's in my room?" she thought. Motioned to the den. No, it was empty. "Quickly gather your things and get out. I won't tolerate you here a minute longer. I'll give you a final payment now." The landlady quickly went into the living room, and Camille began to obediently gather her poor belongings and wait for Michael. He could not fail to show up, to tell her that everything would be all right, that they would still be together. But he did not appear, though he must have been in the apartment, alive and well. "Come in to see me," the landlady shouted from the living room, and when Camille entered, she placed a small wad of bills in front of the girl. "That's all I owe you. Although I should throw you out in disgrace. I took you into my home as my own, and you even got into bed with me. What am I saying? They have no conscience. Have you packed your things? That's it. Take the money and get out of here." Camille heard footsteps in the hallway. It could only be him, Michael. Now they'll come in and tell her everything. But no, the door of the other room slammed again. "I must see Michael." In a trembling voice, Camille said to the landlady, "No, I've seen enough." Isabella pushed her out into the corridor. "Michael?" Camille shouted in desperation, but there was no answer. "Don't make me use force or call the police. It's not in your interest." Isabella was already grinning evilly in the face of the tear-stained girl. "Michael has already gotten everything from you. No one here is interested in you anymore. You're lying. He loves me, not you." Camille shouted, took her bags and suitcase, and went to the door. "He and I will see each other, and we'll be together forever." As the door slammed behind her, Isabella entered the room where her husband sat holding his head. "Well, have you heard what fantasies your beloved has? Why are you sitting there? Why don't you run after her? Why don't you kick me out? Why don't you stand up for her? "Stop it, Isabella. You and I will stay together like we always have. I hope you'll forgive me, and we'll forget all this." Michael looked hopefully at his wife. "I love you, Michael, and I don't want a divorce. Will I forgive you?" "Probably, but it will hardly be possible to forget. Such things are not forgotten." Isabella answered firmly. Camille went outside, not knowing where she was going. Her heart was racing. Her hands were shaking. There were no tears, only complete emptiness in her head. She sat down on some bench, opened a small purse where there were documents and money, and noticed the edge of a white envelope. Well, of course Michael had managed to put a letter to her, explaining where and when they would meet. Clearly this snake, Isabella, had intimidated him with something, wouldn't even let him say goodbye. She pulled out a strangely heavy and thick envelope, which clearly contained more than just a note, opened it money, but that was okay. The main thing was a leaf written in hurried letters. "Camille, this money will be enough for you for the first time. Get yourself a job, or better still, go home to your mother. Don't try to see me. Don't come to see me at all. Don't even come near the house. You might make things very difficult. I hope you'll be reasonable." "That's it? No signature, no nothing?" "What do you mean?" "What do you mean, Leave? Why?" She thought confusedly as she held the sheet in her hands. Camille couldn't quite remember how she lived for the next couple of months. Somehow she lived, rented a room in some dormitory or brothel, and slept more and more, woke up, waited for something and waited. After 2 months, all her hopes were confirmed. She had an excuse to go to her beloved, to try to influence him in some way. She came to the house, which she considered her own for more than a year. She rang the bell and the door was opened by an elderly woman she didn't know. "What do you want?" She asked me sternly. "I really need to see Michael." "Wait, let me ask you something." The woman unceremoniously closed the door in front of Camille and left. Isabella appeared a minute later. "You've decided not to abandon your endeavors after all, haven't you? Do you want to get into serious trouble?" She asked contemptuously, even contemptuously. "I want Michael." Camille tried to speak firmly, but she could hear her voice shaking. "He doesn't need you, and no one here does. Get out." The landlady wanted to close the door, but Camille held her back and said desperately, "I can't just leave like this. I'm having a baby." And the landlady's face twitched strangely. She staggered back. "What? Get out. I don't want to see you again. I want Michael," the girl said in despair. "He's not here. He's gone, all right. Go away, Camille. Don't make it worse." The door slammed shut. Isabella went into the room where her husband was watching soccer. "What do you hear yours was here?" Michael turned off the TV, stared at his wife. "Why? What do you mean, why? She loves you, believes you. She's expecting a child." "Run. Catch up, apologize." Swallowing tears, Isabella said, "No, Isabella, I'm not going anywhere. And she's probably lying. Isabella, don't cry, please, we'll still be together. I don't want any children, no Camille, I told you." And Camille realized that her last hope was gone, whether Michael had left or not, but the landlady was not deceived. He didn't want Camille, and nobody did. It became clear after she returned to her mother, hoping somehow to survive the grief, to give birth to a child, and then, well, as it turns out. It was scary, of course, to confess everything to her mother, but where could she go but to her home? Clara at first rejoiced at her daughter's arrival, thinking that she had come on vacation, but when she heard why Camille had actually come, she pointed at the door. "I warned you, why are you here now, to embarrass me?" "Oh no. Go back to where you've been fattening up." Go to your beau and let him do what he wants with you, even eat your porridge. He doesn't want anything. He's the boss I worked for." Camille cried, "With a married man? Oh, you're a bitch. Get out of town, I say, to the city, and I don't want to see you here. You hear me? We'll tell people that you came to visit with news, and don't cry, make a cheerful face, you came to visit," Mother said angrily. She did not raise her voice. On the contrary, she spoke quietly, but the expression on her face could frighten anyone. "Mommy, I have nowhere to go." Camille did not cry. She was filled with utter despair, even indifference to herself, to the future child, to Michael. "Please let me live somehow, even in the barn, even in the summer kitchen. I'll give birth, and then they'll go away, honestly." "Are you crazy? What barn? Who are you going to give birth to? To have people spit in my eyes. Go away, I'm telling you, or I'll disgrace you myself, drag you by the hair into the street, and chase you through the village with a dirty rag. You unscrupulous slut, you've done it, you'll have to get out of it yourself." Realizing that no amount of pleading would work on her mother, Camille left her home wherever her eyes took her, where no one knows her, where she will not dishonor her mother. In a distant village, where for a while she lived in an abandoned house, then moved to a lonely and little understanding old woman who took Camille for her granddaughter. When she felt that it was time to give birth, she went on foot to the village hospital, where they did not want to accept her, and when they did, it was too late, or her weakened body could not withstand the birth of 2 children at once. Camille died without regaining consciousness. Clara was the first to hear the sad news, and she came to bury her daughter. It was not so far to go. The next day, the funny mother already bent over the body of her only daughter. "Camille, my poor girl, it's my fault. I sent you to town, and then I threw you out of the house. I had no pity. Forgive me, my dear." The deceased girl began to prepare to be sent to her native village, where they were going to bury her in the fence of her grandfather and grandmother, and Clara was taken to see her granddaughters. "Well, decide what to do with them, whether you want to take them for yourselves or write a refusal. We can't keep the children here. They should be sent to a children's home." Looking at her granddaughters, the woman was in tears again. "I can't afford 2. I'm not old enough, but I don't want to give up both of them either. I'll take one of them, the one who was born bigger, just like my Camille. And the other one, God willing, will be adopted by good people, will grow up, and then maybe they'll meet someday." So I brought home a dead daughter and a living granddaughter. At the cemetery, she cried over the fresh grave, talked to her long-dead father and mother, apologized for everything, but Ethan, your Camille daddy, disappeared unknown where, and you won't find his grave, and I'll name your daughter Melissa. A beautiful name, unusual. Let her live, maybe she'll be happy. You rest in peace. Don't be afraid, I won't hurt the child, and I won't allow such a thing to happen to you. Michael got a call. They said that Camille had given birth to twins, girls, and died. Is that how it is? There is no Camille anymore. There are 2 girls, her and my continuation in this world. He mumbled confusedly. Then he poured cognac into his glass, took a couple of sips to calm his inner trembling, and went to inform his wife about what had happened. He felt sorry for Isabella, too. He saw how bitterly she cried when she learned of his mistress's pregnancy. She herself had long been diagnosed with infertility. He was cowardly then. Let Camille go somewhere unknown. He did not want to upset his wife. But now it's a different case. His own daughters will not grow up as orphans. Let Isabella take it as she wills and do as she knows how, but he can't live otherwise. Isabella turned white when she heard her husband's story about Camille, but when she heard that he was going to take his girls and adopt them, she shook her head. No, 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 it won't do, Michael. I won't take children from that one and think, are they yours? She lived with you. She could have lived with a dozen more. No, she couldn't. First of all, remember, she had no time for anything but shopping. And secondly, I'm sorry, but she loved me. I was her first, the only one, and I ruined her, and I won't ruin my daughters. Of course, you can only ruin me. Then you brought your mistress into our bed, and now her children. Isabella sobbed, and Michael began to get ready to go. The housekeeper after Camille, not a young one, as Isabella said, experienced with references. Michael immediately asked her if Barbara would agree to take on the babysitting duties, but she waved her hands. I don't know how to take care of children. Infants and 2 babies at once. No, look for a nanny if you want. I can help. That is, ask around in my circles. But I'm out of here. No, you stay and we'll find a nanny, said Michael. Isabella, who had heard this conversation, smiled crookedly at her husband. Well, a house full of servants and your own children. There won't be room for me, will there? Don't be silly, Isabella. You're my wife, my dearest person. Remember, it wasn't cowardice that made me give up Camille and choose you. You're dear to me. I can't do it without you. And I believe you'll accept the girls, too. You're not what you want to be now. You're angry. You see, there's no one left to be jealous of. I promised I'd never do it again. What's jealousy got to do with it? I just can't imagine this life, and I don't want to live like this. Those girls are your daughters, aren't they mine? I'm sorry, they're strangers to me. A constant reminder of your betrayal. I wouldn't respect myself if I started washing their dirty diapers. They'll be daughters to you too. Think about it, they're newborns. They don't know any other mom. Michael went to a village he didn't know to pick up his daughters. There he got the news. Only one girl remained. The second was taken away by relatives. Maybe it's for the best. Michael thought, with one is easier, and the second is still not in an orphanage and at the home of relatives. Although they say it is impossible to separate twins, but if it happened so, what can be done? So I came home with one little girl. What about the other one? Lost it on the way or threw it away? Isabella said gloomily. She wouldn't even look at the baby. She left, locked herself in the bedroom. While Michael was away, Barbara, at his request, bought everything necessary for the baby, that is, for 2 children. They were expecting twins. Her nanny, Kelly, helped her with the selection. An elderly woman, also with a lot of experience. She took the baby in her arms and reassured the father. Don't worry, I've raised a dozen of these kids, and they're all alive and well. My first child is already married, and your Molly is not up to marriage, but up to school. Somehow I will reach. Well, for a start, she'll have everything she needs, and in duplicate. Yes, Michael decided to name the girl Molly. I tried to consult Isabella, but she was rude. Camille should be called Camille. In honor of her mother, she'll be a kitchen worker too, and in her spare time she'll please the owners. Shame on you, Isabella, to talk like that about a dead woman, especially as she was not guilty of anything, much less a child. Did you even look at how pretty she was? Let Molly be Molly. All right, I'm wrong. Let Camille forgive me where she is. What you name your daughter and what she looks like is the least of my concern. Deal with her yourself if you have nothing better to do. The housekeeper Barbara left after all. She decided she didn't need an extra person in the house. Isabella took over the household herself, especially since she had less work to do. She treated the girl, whom she had never learned to consider a daughter, although she had officially adopted her, coolly, in her arms did not talk to her, even to the crib approached without much willingness and looked at the little girl rather with dislike. Only when Molly was 6 months old, there was a breakthrough. Isabella came to the crib as if on duty, as always indifferent, looked at the child, and suddenly the girl quite meaningfully looked at her, her blue eyes, and blossomed such an open, sincere smile. And the woman, deprived of the opportunity to have their own children, suddenly reached for the girl really maternally. "Molly, my little drop, come to me, baby." Callie slipped out of the room and, wiping her eyes, said to Michael, "Thank goodness our mommy's heart has melted. Hush, don't come in yet. Let her enjoy her daughter." Indeed, from that moment Isabella became a real mother for Molly, loving and caring. She did not spoil the girl excessively, did not try to somehow win her love, just loved herself. And as the girl grew, there was such affection and mutual understanding between them that Isabella herself forgot that she was not the one who gave birth to Molly. Melissa grew up in the village with her grandmother Clara. The girl knew that her mother died in childbirth, her father was unknown, and she got used to living with this knowledge. The grandmother loved and took care of her granddaughter, tried not to make the girl feel deprived in anything, and Melissa did not feel deprived. However, she was a girl who was not capricious, not demanding, and she loved her grandmother very much and tried to take care of her. And how do children take care of adults? They help and do not cause unnecessary problems. Melissa did just that. Since she was little, she helped her grandmother, both at home and in the vegetable garden. She did not like to go for a walk. She enjoyed spending time with her grandmother, listening to stories about her mother and her sad fate. I let my Camille go to the city. That's how it turned out, but it was impossible for her, a modest, simple-minded girl. It's not for nothing they say that where one is born, one is useful, and I orphaned myself and you. And my daddy, who was he? The girl asked. I don't know. I never saw him. I only heard his name was Michael. Well, he must be a bad man if he seduced a girl and threw her out of the house. He cheated on his wife too, but that's their business. She forgave him, of course, for a sweet piece of money and position. Probably lives, and now he doesn't give a shit. Doesn't know about you. Well, you don't know what to think about him. Clara didn't mention that Melissa was born with more than one sister. Why would a girl want to worry about that? She would start thinking about this sister, and even start looking for her, and where would she find her? It's unnecessary torment, and Melissa's sensitive enough as it is. And God be with this sister, or her grandmother will blame her for not taking them both. But she loves her grandmother and realizes that they are alone in the world. And Melissa studied well. She dreamed of being a doctor, and for this she had to try harder, to study more, so she spent a lot of time at home for books in order to learn and not to argue with her grandmother. Because if there was one thing Melissa suffered from as a child, it was overprotection. Clara had to know every minute where her granddaughter was, with whom, and what she was doing, and this naturally deprived the girl of many entertainments of her youth, and not only entertainments. When Melissa finished the 9th grade, her teacher offered her to go to another school in a distant large village. There the level of education is much better, and you can live in a boarding school. When she turned with this proposal to her grandmother, she only mockingly resented. What are you talking about? Who is it, a girl of 15 years from home? I'm sorry, I do not have extra granddaughters. What's so scary about it? You're not going somewhere, but to school? The teacher was surprised. Not to school, to some boarding school. And what happens when grown-up boys and girls live without supervision on their own? It's an outrage, you know. Why unsupervised? There are teachers, tutors. There have never been any outrages, and the teachers there are good, because the main thing is not a boarding school, but a school. What's not a school here? I'm telling you, the teachers there are stronger. They'll prepare your Melissa for the institute. What institute? I'm not going to let her go anywhere. There's nothing to do in those institutes. Why didn't I take her out of school after 9th grade? It's just so the girl doesn't break down at work. Let her finish high school, and then she can go out, even to work on a farm, and she's had enough of these sciences. What are you talking about? The girl has abilities she wants to learn. If she doesn't, I won't let her go anywhere. You have my word. I've already let one go like that. She came back in a coffin, and she was my daughter, the only one. My husband also left for a better life, but there was no grave left, and now I'm going to let my granddaughter go like this. No, it's just the way we were born. Where we're born, we're useful. I am amazed, Clara, at your stiffness and selfishness. The teacher said in her heart, Melissa, the girl is intelligent, decent, so be amazed and let her remain decent. You'd better be amazed than I will be when my only granddaughter is in trouble. And anyway, why are you all rushing off somewhere and dragging your children with you? Somebody has to live in the countryside. Don't you agree? And people live, they live very well. The teacher realized that it was useless to argue with an elderly woman who had been through a lot and was therefore frightened for life, so she left with nothing. She also talked to Melissa and found out that she agreed with her grandmother. That is, she did not want to argue with her and spoil her health. What can you do? That's my grandmother. What's the big deal? Well, I'll finish studying at our school, and when I graduate, then it will be obvious. Then I'll be an adult. Then we'll see how things turn out. The teacher only sighed. She felt sorry for this girl, so intelligent and capable. And in a couple of years, of course, she would be older, but her grandmother would be older, and it would hardly improve her character, and she would hold her granddaughter back with renewed strength, press her pity. So Melissa won't go to school. Of course, the teacher can't do anything about it. She just feels sorry for the girl. Melissa also perfectly finished 11th grade, and here the question of enrollment became especially acute. The grandmother was adamant. There is no reason for you to go. I have already agreed at the farm. They will take you, not as a milkmaid, but as an accountant. What's wrong with that? And a doctor, what kind of job is that? To study for another 6 years, and then to pick through other people's rotten guts for a penny, you've made up your own ideas. And most importantly, think about your mother. She left. So what? Grandma, dear, where did she go? To be a housekeeper. That's what caused all the trouble. No, the trouble is that she was left without supervision, without guidance. I know what students do in these institutes of yours. I watch TV. So a student will come here, and then she'll make such a mess, it's scary to think about. No, Melissa, whatever you want, I'm not letting you go. How can you argue with an old man who builds his ideas about modern life on the basis of soap operas? Melissa tried every evening to convince her grandmother of the necessity to study, but it resulted only in scandals. How not sorry how the girl did not love her grandmother. She realized more and more clearly that she would have to leave her native home and start an independent life, and to do this had to do not at all as the girl wanted. She thought that after graduation she would stay at home, calm Clara down, convince her of the necessity of further studies and go to enroll, but her grandmother every day more and more stubbornly opposed the possible departure of her granddaughter. She locked all her granddaughter's things in the closet, hid the money, went to the farm, arranged for Melissa to go to her new job in a month. You should be glad you're staying at home, and that you young people are so frivolous. There's your friends. They're not all going away. Mary, there she is. Kathy, too, and you're still drawn somewhere else. You've got everything, a nice house, a farm, a job. What else do you need? I need to study. Why did I graduate high school with a medal? Those friends, Mary, she's 7 months pregnant and didn't have to go to the city to make a mess, as you say. And Kathy, what can I say? She's feeble-minded, she's on disability, and you want me to look up to them. I want you home, and you're staying home. Clara cut her off. She knew how to be very bossy, and did not know that at such moments her granddaughter began to sincerely hate her grandmother. And it was at that very moment that a sharp dislike struck her heart painfully. Yes, my grandmother doesn't want to let me go, whether it's because she's afraid for me or because she doesn't want to be alone. And she will never want to, and probably never forgive me if I leave, just like she hasn't forgiven my mother. Yeah, that's how my grandmother is. Kick out her own daughter, pregnant, helpless, and I expect her to tell me, "Go, granddaughter, study." She'll never say that. Then what am I supposed to do? Sit next to her all my life? No way. I'll leave tomorrow morning. I won't even wait till morning. People wake up early, someone will see, grandmother will shout to the heavens, and then my escape will be over, and after that I don't know what else she will think of. Maybe she'll put me on a chain. So the most important decision of my life was made. Melissa, of course, wrote Grandma a penitential and explanatory note. And as soon as there was a snoring sound, indicating that the grandmother had fallen soundly asleep, she put the note on the table, pressed it with a vase, took a travel bag in which she had put a few necessities in advance, a small amount of saved money, and slipped out of the house. By the time I reached the highway, it had dawned, but I didn't wait for the bus. First of all, it was still about 2 hours before its arrival, and I didn't want to sit at the bus stop. Melissa boldly set off along the road towards the train station, which she had to walk to for several hours. But she was in no hurry. She could rest on the way, and maybe she could catch a hitchhiker. She didn't know the schedule of trains, as well as the price of a ticket, but now the main thing for her was to get out of her native place. Cars overtook her rarely. The traffic was not very busy at this early hour. So when one car stopped, Melissa was surprised. She hadn't tried to vote yet. "Do you need a ride?" A young, handsome guy peeped out of the passenger compartment. "If only for free." Having gathered courage, the girl answered. This young man, for some reason, immediately aroused confidence, and driving is still better than walking. Scary stories about what happened to girls who sat in hitchhikers. She tried not to remember, restrained herself. Don't be like your grandmother. It's clear that it's free. Opening the door, the guy said, "Where do you want me to take you?" "I'm going to the train station." "Great. Where are you going at this early hour?" "To the station, and from there by train to the city." Melissa answered in the same tone. "Without luggage, without escorts. Did you run away from someone? And how did you guess?" Melissa was cheerfully surprised. "I left my grandmother." "And from your grandfather?" The young man, apparently, was also more and more pleasant to talk to the girl. "My grandfather ran away from my grandmother a long time ago. Your grandmother must have been a fighter." "She's a fighter." "And Melissa, that's great. You're good." "Honestly, I admire you. That is, many young people from villages leave their parents, some to study, some to work. But how they leave, with a blessing, with a dowry, with the obligatory promise to send potatoes and other products in the fall. And you just took your purse and went on your way. What else was there to do?" "Grandma wouldn't let me go, not with the dowry, not at all. I'd have stayed in the village all my life, working on a farm, or I don't know where else." No, it's not a bad village, but I want to study. If I'd finished school with C's, I'd sit there quietly, but why not study further, right? It's the right thing to do. Besides, you've chosen a good profession. It's great to be a doctor. Look, we're almost to the train station. As you wish, but I don't want to part with you. You're a great traveling companion. Why don't I drive you to town like this? Why not? It'll be faster and more convenient. If it's not too much trouble, I don't know. What's so hard about it? I'm not saying I'll carry you on my shoulders. I'll take you by car, especially if I'm going to town myself, and it's more fun in company, so we'll both benefit. You'll get there, and I won't be bored. But you know what? Let's start talking on a first-name basis, first of all. And secondly, let's get to know each other. My name is Emil, and you are. I'm Melissa. Nice to meet you. Nice to meet you. And we should go for breakfast. There's a little cafe near the station. You're welcome. Oh, thank you, it's embarrassing. You're driving and feeding me. I didn't expect it to be so comfortable to run away from somewhere. Well, there are happy accidents in life. I didn't expect to meet such a nice and sociable girl as a traveling companion. At breakfast, they continued to chat cheerfully, and Melissa told me that she was going to the city almost at random. She had no one there and no one to stay with. I'm going to stay at the station for a while, and then we'll see. Maybe there's some kind of hostel for incoming students, or I'll find out anyway after all. Everyone's settling in somehow. Since we're traveling together, we've already become friends, almost close people. I suggest you live not at the train stations, where girls don't belong, but at my house. No, I'm not offering you anything bad, but I have a 2-room apartment, and I live alone. That is, you would until your enrollment, or there as it turns out, you can live with me, of course. I'm not going to take money from you or force you to provide any services. Just stay until you get settled, that's all. Well, you know, that's too much. Melissa was confused. What do you mean, too much? Why can't I do you a favor? I mean, invite you to visit me. Maybe, by the way, I have some mercantile considerations. You study to become a doctor, and I'll get sick. Who's going to treat me? I'll come straight to you. Well, Melissa, would you be kind enough to treat me for free? Remember how I drove you to town? That's it. I'm not a selfless do-gooder. All right, I'll do it on those terms. I promise to treat you all my life, and not only you, but all your relatives, free of charge and of high quality. Solemnly promised Melissa. Well, about relatives, you will not be tortured. I do not have so many of them, and I myself do not suffer from any diseases, but you know, all under God, as they say. And in general, it will be even pleasant for me to come home and see that there is a light on in my window. Someone is waiting for me. We did not pass halfway. As Melissa started to peck her nose, she had not slept all night and was nervous. Emil, to all appearances, was also tired, and the way was not far. That's why he stopped in a small town, near a hotel, equipped in an apartment house. There he took 2 rooms, one for himself and one for Melissa. No, well, such luck I honestly did not expect. The girl said, I thought I would be on a train for 2 days. Frankly speaking, I have almost no money with me, so trifles. If I had enough for a ticket, it would be good, but for tea, it is quite possible that there would be no money left. I can't imagine how I would have traveled. Honestly, Emil, I feel like crying now. And why is that? Do you regret leaving? No, I'm glad I left, and I'm even happier that I met you. It's a miracle, honestly. I lived with my grandmother. She did not scare me with the fact that people are such and such, that some terrible stories happen to girls who left home. But here it is like this. I didn't have such happy stories at home either. In our village, people are all good, of course, but I can't imagine who would take a stranger to town for free, feed him, put him up for the night, and then offer to live with him as a result, even with the prospect of some kind of treatment in the distant future. Never mind, Melissa. I'll be honest with you, I just really liked you. If you were some woman in her 50s, I'd probably give her a free ride to the train station. She'd probably go there to sell apples, but that's all. I wouldn't drive her to the city and take her to cafes, so don't attribute any great qualities to me. It seems to me that not every man will shower all sorts of favors, at least for free. Forgive me for saying so. By the way, I like you very much, and not only because you treated me like that, but just like you, and that's all. In the city, Melissa moved into Emil's apartment. The first thing, she went to the institute to learn about the rules of admission, to submit documents, then she prepared for exams, studied a lot, but the girl did not forget to keep the household. Emil had lived alone for a long time, and the fact that there was a mistress in the apartment was to his advantage. Melissa was not used to sitting idle, so she took on cleaning, cooking lunches, breakfasts, and dinners. They also talked a lot every free minute, and no wonder that two beautiful young people soon became a real couple and a happy couple. Emil immediately told the girl that he was not going to exchange for any civil marriages and offered her to become his wife, not having finished the first year. Melissa married the man she loved. About the changes in her life, she informed her grandmother, called on the phone. The conversation was terrible. Her grandmother cursed her, forbade her to come, and said that from now on she has no granddaughter. But the girl did not forget that she has a grandmother. She faithfully sent her congratulations on every holiday, wrote letters about her life, but here to visit her and did not get out, and the scandal was afraid. And there was no time. She studied, worked, and when she graduated from the institute and already got a job at the hospital, she was informed that her grandmother died. This news came as a complete surprise. Of course, the girl perfectly understood that the grandmother is not young and not eternal, but she was always so energetic, so determined. It seemed that they still had time to make up, to become together again, the most kindred people, and suddenly, Melissa had to go to her native place for the funeral, but also to sell her grandmother's house. After crying at the family graves and settling things with the house, she went back to the city where her husband and work were waiting for her. She decided to spend the money from the sale of the house on renovating the apartment where she and Emil lived. Although she tried to keep it in order, but still the apartment needed some remodeling, and the money was not so much, and for something more substantial, they would not be enough. In general, in their family, there was never any extra income. Emil, of course, worked, but Melissa could not get into the essence of his occupation. He was the manager of a large businessman, and most of all dreamed of organizing his own business. He had even made attempts to start his own business, but without success. The fault of his failures was mostly lack of money. Emil often lamented, "I was born too late. They say that in the last century you could literally start from scratch and quite quickly turn around. And now what?" Melissa believed that her husband lacks not only money, but also knowledge, the right connections, and much more, but to talk about it aloud avoided. Why break the dream of her beloved man? And there was no harm in it. Even when Emil tried to organize something, it did not bring income, but did not ruin them. There were losses, but insignificant. What bothered Melissa more was that Emil was very upset about failures. After all, he tried, did something, and again nothing worked out. The man did not leave his attempts, which sometimes worried Melissa. She knew that Emil was a risky man, and one day her worries were justified. Emil came home cheerful, excited, with a bottle of champagne. "Let's go out, Melissa. My dream has come true." I have prepared a successful business project for which I was given a loan of money. How much? Melissa tensed up. From the answer, she was horrified. Emil, are you crazy? What if something goes wrong? Melissa, can you for once not spoil my party? Bring the glasses quickly. What's the matter with you? Whenever I think of something, it's a car. What if this? What if that? Why don't we just sit here and do nothing? Remember, you complained about your grandmother, and now you're adopting her habits. Genes are a great thing. What will happen to you in your old age? All right, Emil, let's celebrate, but you have to admit, there's still a risk involved, and the sum is too large. How are we going to pay it back? Oh, really? Let's think of it the other way around. We've already made a lot of money, paid off all our debts, and are living happily ever after. How are you gonna make it? I think your problem is that you're always thinking about the end result in your mind, which is always successful. And you don't even think about how you're going to get that luck. The main thing is to get into the fight. And how many times have you been in a fight? At least you didn't get into such monstrous debts before. No, I can't do that. What kind of wife am I? You can't come to her with anything, not with grief, not with joy. If it's joy, then I don't want anything to happen. If it's trouble, but I told you. Do I have to do everything in silence without telling you anything? Oh, come on, honey. We've never kept secrets from each other. I'm always on your side, remember? I'm glad you got something, and when you do, I'll be happy. Come on, let's drink to success. So Emil started his business. For 6 months, he was businesslike, active, serious, and in the end, completely happy. Things were going well. He even started talking about having a baby. It had been put off until better times, which never came. Melissa was also happy for her husband, although at first there was no special income. On the contrary, sometimes they had to live in austerity mode. What about children? And then things began to get upset. Emil was increasingly frustrated, traveling on some business that his wife did not know about, constantly talking to someone on the phone, then arguing, then asking for some kind of postponement. In the end, it became clear that he again failed. The huge debt had increased and was still hanging on Emil, and therefore on Melissa. After a year, it was finally clear that he had failed. He was ruined. Emil, how is it? Why don't you tell me anything? Are we doing so badly? She finally decided to ask her husband. He had been so irritable lately that he reacted violently to more innocent questions. And so it was this time. I'm bad. What do you care? Sit in your hospital, give enemas or whatever it is you do. I don't know what I'm supposed to do. Just keep your mouth shut this time, I told you. What's the use of you talking? Other people have wives, business assistants, and mine can only prescribe Valadol. Who stopped you from going into economics? You know, there's a saying. If a husband is a merchant, his wife is an accountant. I didn't marry a merchant, and you knew I wasn't going to be an accountant. What's the use if you don't listen to me anyway? If I was the best accountant, economist, lawyer, you'd still do things your own way. If you had a head on your shoulders, I'd listen, but what's the use of consulting a pipe? Don't go there. Don't do that. Take your vitamins. Wash your hands before you eat. That's all your advice. You know, I haven't given advice in a long time. You do whatever you want. And this is what happens. And now what are you gonna do? Sell the apartment? You'll get so much for it, you won't even cover half your debts. The only thing to do is to sell yourself. Where? To a meat stand? Don't make up nonsense. Let's be realistic. Melissa still hoped that they could somehow settle the situation. Come on, except there aren't any. There are no unrealistic ones, by the way. Emma was annoyed and frustrated. If you declare bankruptcy, the wife was looking for options. That's female logic. You think it's so easy? It would take a lot of time, and it's not clear whether something will work out, and what's the point? Or as a bankrupt, I'll be less painful to kill. Why would they kill you? If you're dead, you won't give them anything, and this way you can at least claim half of it. They'll claim it all, my dear silly girl. They'll claim it all, every last bit of it, and I'm sorry about that. I don't know in what capacity. Maybe they'll just torture you in front of me first, so it hurts me more. In short, we're in deep shit, Melissa. Prepare for the worst. Melissa opened her mouth to say something else. Her husband jumped up, shouted some more insults, and stormed out of the apartment. The next few days became a nightmare for the woman. The husband did not return, did not answer the phone, did not give any news about himself. For some reason, Melissa was afraid to contact the law enforcement agencies. It seemed that this way she would only aggravate the situation. Finally, when she was ready to call the police, the door opened. Yes, it was Emil, alive, healthy, and even happy. "Honey, where have you been?" I almost went crazy. His wife rushed to him. "Dance, Melissa." Emil replied, and Melissa realized that he had been drinking. "I've settled everything. The money will be there. The debt will be covered. The victory will be ours. In the meantime, I have to sleep, and you have to take care of the banquet we both have to attend tonight. Get your suits in order, and most importantly, yourself. You should be radiantly beautiful content. Hair, makeup, all your feminine stuff, you know. So I'll go to bed. You get to work." Melissa, not understanding anything, began to fulfill her husband's orders. Molly, of course, had no idea about all this, nor did she know about the existence of Melissa, her twin sister. She had always considered herself the only and favorite daughter of her parents Isabella and Michael, and very happy. Sometimes envious people said, well, she was born with a golden spoon in her mouth, but Molly was offended by such statements. What does any spoon have to do with it? Yes, her parents have always supported her, but what would she have achieved if she had counted only on this support? She studied on her own, without help. If she needed help, she asked her parents to pay for a tutor, but it was not very often. So her gold medal for secondary education was not bought at all. Molly's further education was abroad. And here, yes, thanks to Dad and Mom, nothing to say. She learned that she herself, and in her father's firm worked, herself, helping the cause and not taking advantage of his position as a daughter. So envious people can console themselves with the thought that they were just unlucky, not there and not born to the wrong people. And this despite the fact that everyone knew that sometimes the children of wealthy parents only use the money of their fathers and end up very sad, and certainly its merit considered Molly her personal life. She married early, but successfully and for great love. No one will say that in their relationship with Christian was some kind of calculation. Well, and 2 beautiful children. It is definitely an undeniable merit of her Molly. That her life could be very different, she learned only about 10 years ago, just overheard a conversation between her father and mother. They were either arguing or arguing, which was rare. "Do you think it was so easy for me to endure your affair with our housekeeper?" Isabella said angrily, "And you're going to spend the rest of your life reminding me of it. What problems did you and I have at that time? What was I, a healthy young man, supposed to do at the time? What was I supposed to do when your Camille showed up here with a belly full of your baby? How was I supposed to take that baby? Yes, I did it knowing that Molly was your daughter, she was mine. I loved her, but what was it like for me to see her growing up to be your mistress? Isabella. But that was when, wasn't it? But now we have a daughter. And what daughter? What about Camille? She paid with her life for her birth, and that's enough of that. Molly was shocked by what she heard. What were they talking about? Molly had always thought she was an only child because she was late. Her parents had almost 20 years before she was born, and there was nothing strange about that. But what she heard was, okay, Dad cheated on Mom. It happens. Especially since it was years ago, it doesn't matter and has nothing to do with Molly herself. But the fact that a certain Camille paid with her life for the birth of a wonderful daughter, that is her Molly. What's that supposed to mean? She comes out the daughter not of her parents, but of some unknown woman and father. No matter how much her parents try to hide it, she has to know everything. This secret already definitely concerns her directly, Molly. In the evening, while her father was not at home, Molly began to question her mother, and she tearfully told everything about her father's affair with the housekeeper Camille, that Isabella had thrown the girl out and she gave birth somewhere in the village, dying after childbirth. The fact that then was born a twin did not tell. Why further traumatize her daughter? And soon Molly almost forgot about the fact that she is a daughter only to her father, because Isabella managed to become such a mother, which can only dream of. Only this morning's conversation with her husband, the picture of a woman so much like Molly herself, reminded her of this story. She, Molly, looking like her own mother who had died. Or maybe she didn't die and had another daughter later? Or did she already have a child? At any rate, this resemblance can't be just a coincidence, and she must find out the truth. To do that, she'd have to talk to her father first. Dad, she sat down with her father. I know the secret of my birth. Don't worry about it. I take everything normally and thank you and Mom for my life, but it turns out that I do not know everything. Here, look. What news I read in the newspaper, and she put the newspaper in front of Michael, with a portrait of an unknown woman with her face. My father turned pale and took the paper with a trembling hand. Yes, I should have told you everything from the beginning. But who knew? It must have been your sister. You were twins. I went to get two, but I didn't have time. My grandmother took one and raised her. Murder, psychiatric hospital. My daughter, your sister. Wait, Dad, it says here it's only a suspicion of murder. I've already told my husband to find out through his channels which hospital and what diagnosis. Don't worry, I'll go there myself and find out. Do you have to? Aren't you scared? You yourself said that this is your daughter and my sister, and their own in trouble do not abandon. And I feel that our Melissa got in big trouble, and help her except for us no one. My father approved of Molly's desire to find her sister, but Isabella tried to dissuade her. Blood is not water, of course, but think, Molly, do you need such relatives? Let's say she's innocent, but it's not like the accusation was made out of thin air. I'm sorry, Mommy, but I can't not go. At least I have to find out what the case was about. Don't you agree? Molly explained. Melissa sat in the hospital garden. In nice weather, patients who were not a danger to themselves or others were allowed out for a walk. Today was a wonderfully warm, sunny fall day, and Melissa was out for some fresh air. She was a calm patient, faithfully undergoing all the procedures, obediently taking the prescribed medications. Maybe that was why her mind was so empty. Only one question sounded over and over again. Why did I have to go through all this? However, she did not remember what it was. That is, she tried not to remember the past, not to notice the present. And the future? Did Melissa have one? She indifferently watched the yellowing leaves and did not pay any attention to the fact that someone sat next to her on the bench. But this neighbor was obviously not one of her patients, and had sat down for a reason. "Melissa," she called out. The girl looked at her neighbor on the bench indifferently at first, but suddenly shrieked and recoiled. "Again?" she muttered. "A hallucination? Who are you?" And she touched the hand of the girl sitting next to her, who looked uncannily like Melissa herself. "Don't worry." The neighbor also took her hand. "I am your sister. We are twins separated as babies. Your grandmother took you. My father took me. I'm Molly, Melissa." In a trembling voice, the girl whispered, "So I'm not alone." "Yes, you have me, your father, my mom, adopted, but like family. And we want to help you get out of here. Listen, from now on, don't drink any medication. Pretend to drink, or you won't get out of here, and this way we can manage. You'll never be alone again. I don't know much of your story. You'll tell me the details later. But I believe you're innocent. It wasn't my fault. It was Emil, my husband, who set it up. It's all about the money. I'm now $100,000 in debt, but I can never pay it back. Why did they do this to me? I didn't kill anyone. Why? Why? Why?" Melissa was hysterical, and a nurse was running to them. "It'll pass. Don't worry." Molly said, "It's just that we are sisters. We haven't seen each other for a long time, so." Hugging the sobbing Melissa, she helped her to the room, laid her down. "Remember what I told you. Soon you'll be free." Melissa's story. Christian, Molly's husband, found out. Melissa was indeed charged with negligent homicide at that very banquet. It turned out that Christian knew Jacob, the father of the deceased Ethan. Did Ethan and Emil have an argument at that party? The reasons for which were not hard to guess. Money. The argument turned into a scuffle. Emil pushed Ethan down the stairs, and he died as a result. The debt issue was resolved that way, and to avoid responsibility for the murder, he blamed his own wife for the incident. To the investigator, Emil said that Ethan had harassed Melissa and she had pushed him down the stairs. She often goes on a rampage when she's angry. "I myself have suffered seriously from her," Emil declared. He didn't want his wife to go to prison, so he decided to pass her off as insane. It was not difficult, because after what happened, the girl had a serious nervous breakdown. But Jacob conducted his own investigation into the death of his son, as a result of which he learned that from the account of Ethan, a year ago, really missing amount of $100,000. He also found a receipt written by Emil, which explained a lot, especially since Emil had disappeared to an unknown destination. He was never seen again. Maybe he went abroad? But it was possible that something much more terrible had happened to him. But Melissa, and especially her sister, were no longer interested in his fate. Melissa was cleared of all charges and suspicions, and then she was released from the hospital. It was clear that all her problems were related to the situation she had gotten into. Molly and Michael, the father, came to meet her after she was discharged. Melissa, it was so strange, so unfamiliar. This elderly, already decent man, and suddenly her dad. Will she have to call him that? And could she? After all, her grandmother had spoken ill of her father many times. Kicking a pregnant girl out of the house, even though her grandmother did the same thing. Poor Camille, who never saw her children, who never became a mother. And this one is standing there, alive and well. Michael came up to Melissa, put his arm around her shoulders, kissed her on the head. "Hello, daughter. I realize it is not easy for you to accept me, and even more so to forgive me. Believe me, I can't forgive myself for." "Don't, Michael." Melissa's a little distant. "It's the past. It's just the way life turned out. There's nothing you can do about it. I don't blame you for anything. Will you come and live with Isabella, Molly's mom?" I assure you she'll take you in like family. No, why would she? I have an apartment. I'll go home. Melissa saw that her father did not mind inviting her to his house, but was also relieved when he refused. But we'll still be relatives, won't we? I don't want to lose myself again. No, we won't be lost now. You're all I've got, except Molly and her family. I'd rather visit her, meet her nephews, my little relatives, and we'll see you again. In the meantime, I want to go home, have a rest, clean up after the hospital. No offense to me, please. Molly will take me home, won't she? Melissa got in her sister's car, and they drove off. You do hold a grudge against your father after all. Molly said, No, Molly, I really don't. And if I do, it's not for me, but for our mother, Camille. No matter what you say, he has his share of the blame for her absence. Yes, I suppose so, but I hadn't thought about it. Of course, for you, he's a daddy. He carried you in his arms, changed your diapers, took you to kindergarten, to school, married you, but for me, he's a man who abandoned my pregnant mother. That's what I knew from childhood. The word daddy means nothing to me, and now it's too late for me to adopt someone. I hope you understand and don't resent your father. Oh, really, Melissa? You're right. He's a daddy to me and a nobody to you, and yet we're sisters and twins. That's great. Yeah, that's what life is all about. Besides, the other reason I didn't accept his invitation was because of your foster mom. I mean, she probably wouldn't want to see me. You're her own daughter, and I'm your copy, but I'm a constant reminder of my husband's infidelity. I don't think she'd be too happy about it. Besides, my grandmother told me, and I can see from the pictures that I look more like my mom. No, I don't think Mom would be upset. She's a really nice person. Yeah, her dad cheating on her was a blow, but that was a long time ago. No, she's forgotten. I'm telling you the truth. How do we know what's in the minds of people, even those closest to us? Melissa got dark. Listen, sis, are you sure you should go home? I mean, you'll be all alone there. My husband and I have a rather large apartment. You will have a separate room where you will not be disturbed, but it will be easier to tidy up. I have everything you need. Everything will be perfect for you. We are almost one, aren't we? Molly said firmly. But think about it. What are you going to do there alone? In a couple of days we'll go together, and I'll help you clean it up. You know, you're probably right. I'm afraid to be alone. I don't know what's going to happen again. Thank you, Molly. I didn't want to come to your place because I was afraid of being cramped, but now that you mention it, what's there to be cramped about? We still have a lot to talk about, and it's a good time to start catching up on all the things we missed out on as kids.